And so yes, that's where the fundamental problem starts. They have no way out of this trap. John Boehner went because of this. Paul Ryan will go because of it. The next one will go because of it, because it is structurally, the House of Representatives is structurally damaged like it's never been, to the point that we have to reset that.
Is
So,
McConnell as evil as he seems?
you know, and I would say something.
Sparkle in his eyes?
I've only worked with it, I had a positive experience in working on a piece of legislation on veteran suicide, but I would tell all of you this, and this is what's a real challenge, and I think we're in this mode, that I understand, and the president aside, because it doesn't work with it, as members of Congress, and in the case of members of Congress in Minnesota's delegation, I am friendly and try and reach out because we have a common goal. And I try not to assume worse motives of people. It's better for my mental health, because if somebody because if somebody's in the grocery store going off on me, to show a little empathy and say, you know what, this must be really important to this person. Something must be going wrong with their lives that they need to do that. I try and do that with my colleagues. Here's what I can tell you. Rank and file members of Congress are a different breed than leadership. Leadership exists for a different reason, and that whole redistricting thing is, the only people who get into leadership are people who in safe districts can all just spend their time raising money and give it to other people who support them. I think with that case is there's very little interaction anymore between rank and file members and leadership on the other side of the aisle, and so it's hard for me to say. I would assume that he would like to see people get health care and people get jobs and people to have safe houses and safe roads. But at some point in time, words are words, actions are what stands for something. So I'll let you decide on where it's at. So yes, sir.
Representative Walz, I live in Congressional District 2. You're not my representative, but I want to thank you for coming up to speak to us. To thank you in person for your vote last week against that health care bill.
Yeah.
It was, Jason Lewis has made a serious mistake hanging his hat on that, and Angie, I hope that you make him pay for that with campaign ads. But Representative, thank you for your commitment to the state. You make me proud to be a resident of the state. I think you'll make a fine governor, but I think we're going to miss your leadership in the House if you succeed in your endeavor. And to Angie, I hope you really are seriously considering rerunning. I agree completely with Keith Ellison last week, who encouraged you to run. Please, with Jason Lewis's current approval ratings, I think you can more than eclipse that 2% barrier. Please.
What are we going to do without you?
Yeah, well, you were kind. You know what the difference between that and a eulogy is? One person believes what you said. And the eulogy, none of you do. No, I'm grateful for that. But here's what I think is what's changed in the 1st District. Keep this in mind, I'm the 2nd Democrat in 125 years in the 1st District. The other one left the party to run Kasich's campaign and John McCain's campaign. So it's me, and there's been 3 of us since statehood. But I'll tell you what's changed is that the activism of the people, that more folks have shown up. There's John Austinson is here tonight, who's a candidate who ran against a state house candidate, ran a great race. I'm somewhat biased to him because he's a high school teacher and a football coach, but I'm just saying he's out here. So what I would tell you is here's what I would say. I too am concerned. This is one of the swing seats. It's the 2nd reddest district that a Democrat has. There are only 9 rural Democrats left in America. So I understand that it's a difficult one, but here's what's different. In 2020, redistricting is coming, and Minnesota is going to lose a seat anyway because of population decline. And if we do not win the governor's seat, they will redraw the districts, and there will be no 1st District anywhere. There will be no state house seats we can get, and they will redraw the state Senate seats. So I feel a real sense of affinity to make sure the whole process is fair, but I'm telling you this, and again, it's 18 months, and none of this matters if people don't get out and work for the change they want to see. I saw polling that the congressional generic poll showed a bigger gap than has ever been recorded before, and people are responding that they believe the House of Representatives has to change to be a check on the presidency. So in response to that is, they might not get better. I think it's a good deal.
So, back to healthcare, because I can't resist, and Jason Lewis. Look, this was one of the worst days I've had since Election Day, when Jason Lewis and Eric Paulson and Tom Emmer all cast votes in favor of that terrible, terrible bill. And many of you saw me on the campaign trail. You know my personal story. I grew up without health insurance in my family. We didn't go to the dentist because we couldn't afford to go to the dentist. And no family in this country should ever not be able to take their kid to the doctor. It just should not happen in the most prosperous nation on earth. So that was a tough day for me, because I know my vote would have been exactly the opposite for Jason Lewis, and I know he's been going around talking about the problems with healthcare, and there are. We have to acknowledge that there are a number of folks with healthcare plans right now that are unaffordable and that have too high deductibles, and we need to focus on the problem and fix that. We don't need to kick Medicaid recipients off. We don't need to kick 24 million people off of their health care, and we don't need to do anything until we actually know what the hell we're doing. So let's see the Congressional Budget Office score. Let's find out what we're working on. So that was the day that I woke up and said, let's go again. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go do some town halls. Let's go.
Okay, my name is Gail Hoffman, and I've been living in Apple Valley for 19 years. One of the biggest blessings is my state senator, it's Greg Clausen. One of the blessings are because I have a 21-year-old who has Williams syndrome, and he has cognitive speech delays, fine motor and gross motor delays. We have the state of Minnesota and the federal government has spent thousands of dollars, and our insurance company, we have insurance, making sure that my son has the best quality of life that he can have. We have, with the support of 196, District 196, we have fought to make sure that Eric is included in everything he has done. He was homecoming king of Rosemont High School. Yeah. But my concern, especially, I'm concerned that we have a president and we have a congressman who doesn't understand the sacrifices that families make to make sure that children like Eric and adults like Eric have a good quality of life. If we lose Medicaid, I don't know how my husband and I will be able to make it financially. And I also don't know what the quality of life will be for Eric, because he's got a pretty good life, but I can't, just so that he can function on a day-to-day basis, his medicines, just his medicines, cost the state of Minnesota and the federal government $15,000 a year at least. And that's not all the surgeries and all the medical treatments that he's had. So I don't want to say, woe is me. What I want to know is, will we be in danger of losing Medicaid, and how do we stop it?
Not with her in Congress. Well, first of all, Eric, come here. The power of the public square is this, that we all understand this, and the president figured out out too, finally, that healthcare is a complicated issue. But you know what? Many times it's not so complicated. Two basic principles. First of all, healthcare is a right and not a privilege. And a semi-quasi-philosophical approach in a Pioneer Press story is not what we're talking about. We're talking about Eric. We're talking about people. And so you can convince yourself all you want of what's on paper, but when people are telling you what's happening to them, that's what the real point is. And we as a society, other societies have been able to figure this out, can figure out a way to say it's a right, a human right to get health care. We should have access that is as efficient as possible, and costs should be at a point where providers are still reimbursed at a fair amount, but it does not destroy the economy. We can all agree upon that, and what we all know, and Angie is an expert and will tell you this is, those who tell us that we should just do it like the free market, healthcare is not a market. We don't know what the costs are in many cases. And in any other transaction, the buyer and the seller are on pretty equal grounds. And if I go in and negotiate with Apple Valley Ford for a car, I probably looked up what that Consumer Report says. I know what the cost is. And if I don't like what they told me, I can go down the street and get another one. And then at the end of the day, if I don't like either one of those, I can go home. Eric can't go home without medicine. He can't negotiate the price. He can't go find out where it's at somewhere else. And no one makes enough money to pay for that on their own. So it's not a woe is me. It's but by the grace of God goes each and every one of us and our children. So we're in it.
Following you to Rosemount next year, so District 196, go, right? Look, like I said before, this is such a personal issue. We cannot stop. I will not stop fighting until every American has health care. Not health insurance, but health care. And that's what we've got to remember. One piece of this health care discussion has been about health care, and that's what's so infuriating to me. It's been about how much something costs. It's been about how much we're willing to pay to have a society that has the right to go to the doctor. It's infuriating. So as we think about this moving forward, don't let them get away with talking about health insurance. You want to know about health care. What I want to know is why Medicare cannot negotiate its pricing for seniors. That's what I want to know. What I want to know is give me a policy, come up with a policy that we can discuss that makes sure every citizen in this country has health care they can afford. That's the key. You should not have to be rich in this great nation to be able to take your kid to the doctor. It should never, ever happen.
We get to give a strange answer.
Awesome.
I really don't believe that members of Congress are all horrible, evil people. You know, I'm not a hater.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be one. But I don't understand what they think this is going to do. I mean, do they just like, yeah, we're going to give all the money to the rich people and no one's going to notice? I mean, I don't believe it. It just would look like that to me, that it's not caring about needy people. And so, can you explain to me
No, it's not
what
a,
you
it's
think
not a,
they're doing?
yeah, it's not a strange question because I'm telling you, and I was teaching high school at Mankato West, came back after deployment with my National Guard unit, watched what was happening in Iraq, decided that President Bush was going to speak in Mankato. I was going to take a couple of my high school students. They asked me to take them. Their parents did, so they wouldn't get in trouble. I took them out there. One of them, they asked for their ID. They pulled out a wallet. They had a John Kerry sticker on there. The person working the event said, "You're going to have to get back on the bus. You've been deemed a threat to the president." And I said, it's fine. They're with me. It's good. Who are you? And I said, well, I'm Tim Walz, thinking that I was somehow special because I was like, I actually was a citizen who lived there or whatever, but a teacher and stuff. And long story short, they didn't deem that I was a threat to the president too. And my wife, when they came back, thought I was arrested. And by that point, when they're starting to get ready to do that, I'm like, oh, dang. So I said, Well, first of all, I told them, I said, I just returned from a deployment. I'm a sergeant major in the Army. They didn't care about that. I told them I was a football coach in Mankato. They didn't care about that. I told them I was teacher of the year. They really didn't care about that. And then at that point in time, this happening in front of my friends and my neighbors in Mankato, at that point in time I was a little ashamed because it felt like maybe for the first time in my life I found out what it's like to get looked through, that I didn't matter to them. I told them that they can find out what was going to be on the front page of the paper in Mankato, President Bush speaking, our local teacher, football coach, sergeant major arrested. So they said they would escort me in if I behaved myself. Gwen thought I was arrested. I wasn't. Long story short, I ended up getting elected to Congress. And when I went to the White House, President Bush said, it might have been easier for us to let you in. My point of the story is it is the weirdest damn thing. I'm teaching school about this. I taught government a little bit. I'm ashamed I should give a refund because it's not like I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. It's totally not like that. But what it is you get there and you look around and you say, oh my God, Kennedy was here, Lincoln was here, Ford, all these people that were here. And you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And then you meet your colleagues and say, what the hell are they doing here? And that's a story that's there, but I'm telling you, I do something every Thursday morning. I do a bipartisan run with my colleagues. We agree not to talk about politics. My Georgia friend wants to talk about the war of northern aggression, and we're not going there. But here's my answer to you on what happens here. That there's several things that have happened. My wife would probably attest to this. One is, we no longer live around each other and our kids don't go to school together. So we don't get to know each other in any meaningful manner anymore. That is real. And what I found is, and I think this is a problem for our country, people tend to gravitate both economically, socially, and almost racially to whether it's suburbs or whether it's areas where everyone around them is validating their point of view on things. And what I found is, many of my colleagues, it is not House of Cards, it's Forrest Gump. Stuff just happens and they're ignorant to it in many cases. And I use ignorant not as a pejorative. They just don't know in some cases what a family's going through. And so I would tell you this, I find this to be a collection of some of the most eclectic, some of the most inspiring people, some of the quirkiest people you would be around. And if we could figure out with the campaign finance reform and the gerrymandered redistricting, it would look just like America, which would have its quirks, its weird idiosyncrasies, its whatever, but it is now a place, and when you look at the House of Representatives, there's little doubt which side of the House looks more like America in terms of that. Every time I'm trying to find one of my colleagues on the other side, it's really hard because they all look like me, Don Rickles. So what happens is, it's not malice, it's not bad intent, it's not cruelty, it's simply, I do not have the life experience, and the Congress is no longer reflective of what people in America look like. So there's no one in Congress who's a mechanic. There's a couple of us who are union members. When I went to Congress, I was the only person in Congress who was a high school teacher who taught under No Child Left Behind. So when I asked to be on the Education Committee, they said, oh, hell no, we don't want that. I'm the only one who worked under it. I wanted to be there. And the idea is that how could you do an education bill without a teacher being there? You'd think you'd have to have that. So if I could get a point to you, these are not bad people with bad hearts that want things to fail. They just have a world view. Whenever I meet them, I'm always amazed. Everybody wants to have the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington story. But it's easier when your dad was a federal judge or a congressman or something, and many of them, that's what happens. And it's not living the life that you live, and they don't understand what it means. So if that makes sense to you, it makes me more, I like these people in many cases, until they vote. And I do not like them so much.
As I was running last cycle, I came up with the idea that we should make a Democrat room, like my kids have gone off to college in dorms. We should make one Democrat and one Republican room together. And so that way they actually have to get to know each other. They kicked me out of the office that I suggested that in, so I don't really think that's an option, but if we only got to know each other, that's the biggest thing. If you talk to folks who've been in DC for a long time, they used to know each other's kids. They used to have dinner together. The demands to come back to the district every single weekend weren't there. And it's important that representatives come back to the district. It'd be great if they met with constituents while they were here.
Yeah.
But it's important. Yes, ma'am.
There, and then that gentleman in the hat. So we have two. Yeah.
Okay.
People are standing up. You people deserve a hand.
With 48 hours notice, standing room only.
Congressman Walz, I have a comment and then a question. I find it really ironic that Jason Lewis had all kinds of wisdom to spew out through the radio waves, but he won't face people face to face to have a decent discussion with them. I think that shows a lot of cowardice. I am asking that you author a bill in the House of Congress that would require people who run for Congress in the House of Representatives reside in the district.
When I was in Congress before I knew that you didn't have to live in the district. I just assumed you had to.
So did we.
I think it's probably a pretty good idea. It's interesting, I was mentioning to someone earlier that the Constitution has a couple of lines that says the requirements to be a member of Congress, but nowhere is there a job description. I always assumed that the title representative is what you were supposed to do, but each office is like an independent business, and you can really do it any way you want. But what I say about it is you don't get to do it any way you want. Your constituents tell you how they want it run. And so that's why this is valuable. And again, I have changed practices in our offices because of what people have given feedback. They own the office. My favorite thing to do in Congress, they have elevators that say members only, and my tourists are out there waiting it. This is my populist thing, and it's what I would do if I were out there. I'm like, well, get in, you own it. Oh man, they're all puffed up there.
Will you do that?
I hear you. I'll sure look in, yeah, I'll see it. I think it has to be a constitutional change.
It is constitutional.
Yeah, it has to be a constitutional change to make any adjustment to the requirements in Article 1. I just never understood why you'd not want to do that.
No, we don't know the answer to that either, but we'd sure like your help to.
We'll look at it.
Well, speaking of the district, I'd like to just pivot over to hear Senator Jim Carlson is here.
Yeah.
Senator Carlson is my senator because I live in the district. And House Rep, I'm coming to you, House Rep Sandy Mason is here. Sandy is my state rep because I live on her side of the district. And I think we mentioned Greg Clausen before, but Senator Greg Clausen. And one of the newest members of the state legislature, she's going to be a rock star, Erin May Quaid is here. Hey, and I'll just add that I beat Lewis by 13 percentage points in Carlson's district.
Yeah.
I beat him by 3 points in Greg Clausen's district. So we're winning around this district.
Sir, you have one in the hat. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Earl Bauer, and I live in Apple Valley, and this is my senior center.
Oh, nice.
I've got two issues. One is the DNC going to come up with a grabber? You know, there's a million reasons that we lost, right? Why we have this president. And there's a million reasons why we should have won. But where's the focus? Is there a grabber? That's one question. The other question is, when you get to be governor and we give you a DFL legislature, will you promise to get universal health care?
Absolutely. Here's what I'd say. If I were you and with me, I wouldn't wait for the DNC to come up with the answer for us. We know what the answer is, as I said. I think many of you here know that. We're not speaking, and again, last time, I keep saying this, we know who they are. I'm convinced our neighbors don't know who we are. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton got 38% in the first district of where I'm at. That's Louisiana type numbers, if you will, on things. And I would argue it's because all of us, and me included in this, tell them what we stand for. Because again, I don't want people to vote for Democrats because we're Democrats. I want people to vote for Democrats because our policies improve people's lives, and especially in rural areas. So what I'm talking about when I see this, we keep asking, how do we win these areas we lost? Just like with me, people came back and said, oh, wow, Tim, what went wrong? I said, you know what? Why didn't you ask me what went right? How did I get 40,000 people to vote for Donald Trump and me? How did that happen? How did they get in there? What's working right? How are we talking to people? How are we connecting with them? We need to have our policies where we can walk in every VFW hall in every small town in Minnesota, because again, this is not about our team. This is not about us winning. This is about policies that are factually effective, that do the things that we want to see. They make our country fair. They make our country more prosperous. They make our community stronger and safer. That's what we're fighting for. I go time and time, I do not disagree with my Republican colleagues because they're Republicans. I disagree because they're wrong. And that is a big so, no, don't wait for the DNC. Don't try and figure out what the sweet spot of the center of the politics is. Talk to the people in the center of their lives, like Eric and his mom. And that's what we can do better. And our policy is about all of those things you hear Angie saying, not trying to figure out how to message that in some clever way. Talk to the heart of where people are at, and we'll get there.
I'm just going to go add that if it were up to the DNC, the DCCC, I'd already be sitting in a dark room calling donors for money right now. So, you know, what they want a candidate to do.
You will do that anyway, but.
What they want a candidate to do is that, and you have to. I started out with 2% name recognition last election cycle. I ended with 70% name recognition across the 2nd Congressional District. You have to do it. You know, we won. I mean, we tied Lewis and Goodhue, okay? So, I mean, we're making significant progress in the 2nd Congressional District, but what we need to do most is what Tim just said. I need to be out talking to voters. I need to be out talking to people about their lives and what's important to them, and listening, mostly. I need to be out listening to people, and so that's what I'm going to do this time, like it or not. Mr.
Ron Goldser.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I had the privilege of working with Angie, volunteering for Angie last time, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Congressman, this question's for you, actually. You talked about Republican...
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, of course. Keep you off the hook, Angie. Republican policies are terrible. The good news is that we haven't had to deal with too many of them. Half a health care bill, the Senate still has to deal with it. The budget wasn't too bad. As you watch the news, all you see is President Trump and his tweets and his craziness and all the rest of that. And I wonder if there's a silver lining. And that is the only thing that's going on in Washington is Trump and his tweets and everything else. And as this young lady said, the McConnell and Ryan program is derailed and buried because Washington is so absorbed with Mr. Trump. Is that good news? Is it happening? And if so, is it good news?
Yeah, it's happening. I think maybe in the short run it could be, but I think anything that undermines people's faith in a functioning democracy in the long run hurts us. I think you see a lot of young people going from skeptic to pessimistic about things. I do think that, don't forget that a lot of the damage that's being done is being done through rule changes in the agencies where they do not need congressional approval, whether it's the EPA, whether it's the Department of Education, so they have a lot of that. I think that it's benefited our Republican colleagues. Al Franken has a great line where he says our Republican colleagues says government doesn't work, then they get elected and prove it. There's a sense of us having to fight, and this is a dilemma for me, for all of you in here, because I hear this all the time. Don't work with them on anything. I fundamentally disagree with that. If I can find a place where I can do something that improves people's lives, I'm leaning into that and trying to fix it, whether it's for veterans or whether I can influence change in a manner. So I think in the short run, perhaps, yes. The thing, someone asked me, they said, what did you learn in 10 years in Congress. And I've been saying this long before Donald Trump. The one thing I really did learn is don't ever say it can't get worse, because they apparently can continue to prove that. So I get a little nervous that the destruction of the basic functions of the House of Representatives in terms of regular order and passing legislation, even though they may be really bad, that even the exercise of the democracy attempting to function is probably better. So I have really mixed feelings about that. But I watched the damage. I think Angie mentioned it. I worry about the shiny object stuff because it's the day-to-day destruction. And I oftentimes talk about it as they destroy these agencies. We tend to think, because I think there's a lot of folks in this room, are probably progressive in their thinking, and you tend to figure out what the next step to fix something is. So I think we think of like what's happening in an election is like they ran the car out of gas. And we'll get elected, we'll put the gas back in and take off. No, they ran the car out of oil. And that is a big difference because they're breaking functions that an election cannot fix and cannot come back. So that's where I would say that's a little bit of a mixed blessing in that. The silver lining of what you said is that members of Congress are loyal to the president until the day they're not. And that's the day they know they're going to have to stand for election. And that loyalty will go right out the window. And the minute that happens, then they will scatter. And that's when things will start to change. And what we hope is again, we're not just, elections are a means to an end. We want to put pressure on people not just to win elections. We want them to change their behaviors on how they're doing things. So that, I think, can start to happen. So they're going to get frustrated, and they may start to compromise so that they can go back home and say they got things done. That is the potential silver lining, and that's the power of elections. So ma'am.
My name is Amy Morgan. I live in Farmington, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but my husband had an aortic dissection about 5 years ago, which is the same thing that killed John Ritter. Well, we've all got a pre-existing condition, correct? Yes. So, do you know what the Senate would be looking at in terms of that? I mean, do you have a sense of how the bill will change or will die? Or that's the thing that keeps me up at night. You know, I mean, he had this, he survived, you know, but he has pains, and we always wonder if something else is coming up.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't, when the first bill got pulled, and watching it from the purely, you know, political maneuverings of how you move bills and things like that, I'm still remain fairly confident that they are not going to change the ACA, the Senate especially, significantly. And the reason I was confident in this in 7 years was I knew there was no alternative. Most of us know it's not as if no one had thought of a different way of doing it. No one had tried a different way of doing it. This was one of those cases. They can bluff on climate change because it's going to be difficult for us to prove a negative in the next 10 years or something like that. There's no bluffing on healthcare because it's going to be instantaneous and there's going to be problems. So what I would argue to you is I think the place they're trying to get to is something that is very similar to ACA that they can call something else, take credit, and just get the heck out of Dodge on it.
Then why don't you rename it for
What's
them?
that?
Can you just rename it for them?
Well, I think people are trying the Trump care thing or wherever they're going. But for those of you, though, and I again say this many times, I'm an eternal optimist, and I supervised the high school lunchroom for 20 years, so I remain a high school. Everything's a good day. I would tell all of you, again, the concerns you have are real. The fear that people have is real. But I think for us collectively is to try and seize this moment.